All right, let's call it to order. Personnel Board. I guess our first item on the agenda tonight is the reorganization of the board. That time of year. As chair, I'm glad to take a step aside and I'd like to nominate Mike McGrath to be the new chair, since going from vice chair to chair. And I would need a second. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
John, great.
Yep.
I have a second and a motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Lucky
Thank
you.
Well, I'll let I'll make my last and final, I guess, as ex chair. I'll nominate Julie to be the vice chair.
I'd second that also.
Mr. Chairman, it's up to you to make a roll call.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So moved.
So moved. Mr. Chairman, I'll let you rock and roll from here.
Oh, I'm so unprepared right now. I don't even have the
That's
agenda.
okay. I'll assist.
All right.
Our next item is the new business, and it's update from town administration. So Jim, the floor is yours, I believe.
Sure. So a couple of items before I go to the select board meeting. I wanted to talk to you folks about town meeting, the process that we're going to go through. It's different, a lot different than what we've done in the past. What the selectmen and the moderator, we've been trying to streamline a lot of things. And this year, as with COVID, we're going to meet out on the high school football field again, likely on October 17th, Saturday at 10 a.m. We have about 23 articles, 5 of them are citizens petitions. The other one are a couple of 4 zoning in there. This one, in-year budget adjustment, and some others. But this one, I'm sure I've already had a resident reach out and question. I know they questioned Larry. He's questioned a couple of the FinCom members too. Is basically taking 7 articles and combining it into one article. The charter requires us to explain the changes to the contracts with all of the town unions. The school unions are not required to do this at all. Town unions are required to put it on file with the town clerk and bring it to town meeting and ask for an appropriation of funding for year 1 for it. So that's what we're doing under this article. But we're also doing the salary schedule for this year and for the next 2 years on top of that. One of the reasons, again, was to streamline the process, but to also get away from this. At times, the salary schedule, and this is the reason you guys, I'm asking you to, be heard about this, is salary schedule at times can be a divisive issue, and we get hung up on it a lot. For the most part, throughout my tenure, it's been anywhere from a 0 to when I first started here, I think we used to get 3% increase. It's never really been higher than that, at least while I've been here in almost 17 years. But what I'm proposing is we go with the 2% this year, which is what the personnel voted on, and then take the average of all of the other contracts in year 2 and year 3. The contracts in year 2 averages out to about 2%. In year 3, it bumps up to a 2.5%. My plan is to file the salary schedule with the town clerk, just as we have done with the contracts, and also send the whole packets, the summary of the changes for the contracts and the salary schedule out to town meeting members. Put together a similar type of memo as I put together for you folks here today, explaining what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that's really about it. I know in the past, a couple of you guys have asked me about finances, so I figured I just would open up the books and explain to you, I understand that there may be some concern about doing this at uncertain times, but I also understand that right now, the town has the money. What I'm proposing to Finance Committee is that we also take an extra almost $3.4 million, put that in stabilization. We have about 450,460 in reserve fund that we haven't touched yet. We have some money. We have about 5.7 million certified free cash. We're going to roll forward about 500,000 of that if the bottom falls out come May. Our new growth was budgeted at 650, and it's coming at over 1.5 million now. That number won't be finalized until probably mid-November, but as it stands right now, it's about 1.5 million or so. So I have a buffer in there. We built this budget that the town was balanced on back in June on a 10% reduction in state aid. As of right now, we've received no reduction in state aid. That's not a given that that's going to carry through the whole year. The state budget that's passed is only good until October 31st, at which time they'll have to, I'm guessing they'll pass another budget for a month or two and get them through Christmas, and then they'll have to pass a real budget once they realize what the outcome is going to be. On the local receipt side, I have reduced down things like hotels tax, meals tax, building permits. So our budget's balanced and we're looking good. And I think that's a credit to the finance committee, the select board, you folks in the past who we've been cautious with the money in the town. Some have criticized us for having too much free cash and putting too much aside, but that's really paying off at this point. And I think what's important in the bad times is to be able to have the money to cover shortfalls. And we have money right now. We just don't know what that shortfall is going to be. Right now, it doesn't exist. So there's a couple of other small changes on the salary schedule, which is some other things the board has considered, I think back in March or so, which consists of adding the position of Parks, Cemetery, and Forestry Superintendent, Highway Superintendent. That's really splitting the two positions. Treasurer Tax Collector, Maryland's retiring at the end of October. So the plan is to essentially move the accountant into the finance director role and move the assistant treasurer tax collector up to the treasurer tax collector. So we got to create that position. Public health nurse, assistant council on aging director, and the recreation wage schedule. So those are minor things that's going to be added on the salary schedule. But again, you guys voted on that months ago. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have. I'm sure you might have a few.
Jim, I didn't hear you mention OPEB. Is that being?
That was my question as well. It always comes up and I'm afraid that it will again.
So right now, OPEB and stabilization, about 2 years ago, we started to include that in the budget. To balance the budget this time around with the expected reduction in state aid, we slashed those. What I'm proposing at this time, and I don't know if finance committee is going to go along with it, is taking $330,000 and putting that towards OPEB. Back in September 2018, the finance committee, board of selectmen, and school committee got together and said, we'll take, what we'd like to do is develop a long-term plan to fund our OPEB liability. That plan consisted of the first $2 million of free cash. We want you to take, I believe it was 2.5%. It equals $50,000. So take the first $50,000, put it in OPEB. Anything above 2 million, take 7.5% of that and put it in OPEB. So I'm sticking to that plan that we agreed to. The finance committee discussed this briefly last night, and some members questioned, should we wait to put money into OPEB to see what happens in the spring? Then we can put the money into OPEB. One of my proposals is to roll, instead of each year, we roll $200,000 forward in free cash. I'd like to bump that up to $500,000 to give us some flexibility in the spring. A few members would like that 327 for OPEB to go into that free cash rollover to address anything. And then if we don't need it in May, we put it all in OPEB. So I'm recommending at this point putting close to 330,000 in OPEB. And our balance in OPEB is just about 4.6 million.
That's the total. The total OPEB liability is only 4.6 million.
No. So
Oh,
our
sorry.
balance in that
Oh, the
account.
balance. I'm sorry. What is the?
The last liability we had was about 2.5 years ago. It was 44 million, I think. We just completed our actuarial study this week. I know it's going to be more than the 44. I'm expecting it to be about 55 million. So that's rough numbers. That one's not finalized, but let's, for rough numbers, say the liability is about 50 million.
I've got more if anybody else. I don't want to.
Jim, what was the budgeted amount that you took out? In other words, what did you originally budget for OPEB, and now that you're replacing, or in a sense, putting it in now at the 300 or so? What was it originally planned
The
for?
original amount budgeted as part of the FY21 operating budget for OPEB was about $500,000. And when I went back in between April and May and made the changes to the budget, we cut the state aid, cut the local receipts by the 10% and the local receipts. I actually cut the meals and the hotels tax in half, and I actually was right on. That's exactly, if you take the last quarter of FY20, FY20, and you multiply it out over four quarters, my number's exact, which is kind of odd, but so it was 500,000 for OPEB and about $300,000 for stabilization, which was budgeted. And then in addition, we always put some extra money from free cash each fall. So, and my plan is with stabilization is to take the 3.4 million dollars, couple that with our roughly $5 million, 5.5 million or something. That'll set aside almost 9% of our operating budget if we were to need it. I'm looking at it too from a bonding perspective too. We're just one step away from that AAA bond rating. And last time around, they said, if you get your reserves up, and I'm hoping that this sends them a message that at almost 9% of reserves, that'll get us to that AAA bond rating. But again, this is such an uncertain time. I don't even know if they'll change, even with good reserves.
Okay,
One final comment on it. I don't necessarily agree, and I think this to me should be in the budget always. It's in my mind, a debt that we owe, and it sounds like it's growing. And to play and plug in with it is, to me, fiscally unsound. And if I was a bonding agency, I would look at that and hold that as a mark against the the financial rating. But that's just my opinion.
okay, so my issue, I think, well, I have a question. By combining the article the way you described, if, everyone's kind of locked into having to decide the whole thing or part of it. So I think that's going to be an issue. Because you're presenting it as a package deal, and that can affect the non-union contracts and increases that you're looking to budget for. The other issue I have is, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe under our own bylaws, the personnel board, we have a duty to make the decisions year to year as to that salary schedule and look at it and not just do a blanket coverall 3-year commitment. And so I'm not really supportive of it. I just think it's going to bypass the function and the role that the personnel board has by voting something in for 3 years, because it does come up every year, but it comes up every year for a reason. So I'm not
Can
sure.
I ask you something, Julie? What
You
do you
sure
think,
can.
and this is not me being sarcastic or
No,
anything.
not at all.
What do you think is the reason? You said
Reason
it
for
comes
what?
up every year for a reason.
Meaning the actual salary schedule?
Yeah.
It comes up because a budget comes up every year, right? I mean, you have a budget that you have to go by, and then you guys present us with the table that we have to take a look at. And I also know that the personnel board has, a survey done, and we take that into consideration. So if I may ask you a question, why are we going to bypass that and just do a 3-year, a 3-year plan just to have something pretty much pre-approved? My other concern is the
Can I
fact that,
answer that one?
yeah, sure.
So the reason this is proposed and
Mhm.
is to allow me to do a better job budgeting. Each year with these contracts, I'm able to lock in, and I know what all of the other 6 groups are going to be for the next 3 years. With this with this particular group, which is roughly about 80 employees, it's always in limbo. And I've checked with council, it's legal. I wouldn't have, the select board asked me, figure out ways to streamline town meeting and move some of these articles along, which we did this one. We've done street acceptances. We've done the school board ones with the McKinney-Ventos, the parking and the Medicare money. So it allows me to be more prepared and to budget better and quicker, rather than come to the personnel board and say, I'd like you to consider this. And then we have to go to town meeting. Town meeting can still say, you know what, I'm not going to fund the council on aging salaries at this much. They still have that authority. Town meeting loses no authority with this. It allows me to have more stability here and know what my actual costs are for the next, well, now it's about 2.5 years. So That's one of the reasons. It streamlines it, and it always seems like, not always, I guess I'll take that back. Some years, this is a divisive issue that certain people get hung up on. And, we're gonna discuss it. It's gonna be out in the open. And then we're locked in for the next 3 years. And if it's not working and the budget comes in poorly, I've told these unions, the other 6, that this is the numbers where we're at. But if next year is worse than this year, or in year 3 is even worse, I'm gonna be coming back to you with one of 2 things. I'll first ask for a 0 or a 1 or some type of reduction in your COLA. Or if you refuse to do that, your members are going to see layoffs and reductions. They all understood that. And it's going to be the same case with the department heads. It's not all department heads covered on this schedule. The 80 or so people covered on this schedule.
So by streamlining it, what my point is then you're taking us out of the equation for the next 3 years. And I don't think that that's the intention of the actual bylaws of the personnel board. And that's my concern. In addition, it's almost like you're suggesting that this part of your budget has been difficult for you to budget for. And I've never seen that. I mean, you seem to have it down pat just based on the comments that you made a few moments ago about how well things are going and how the budget's in really good shape. And that's something it seems like you've done year to year. So to use that as an excuse or a reason to just quote streamline it, I'm not sure that that's appropriate. I don't think I think by taking us out of the loop to some degree, even if it is divisive, it's divisive for a reason. It's divisive because there's taxpayers' money. And I'm not suggesting you're not doing a good job with it. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just talking about the actual process that we use in order to look at this in our own personnel bylaws that we have to follow. I just think it takes us out of the equation, and I think it's a slippery slope, and I think it's dangerous. And that's what we're here for. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I thought that that's what our role was to take a look at any type of reclassification in that chart, whether it be positions, pay rates, anything that's going to affect it is something that we take a look at. And it's worked thus far. So I guess I'm just questioning why it's not working all of a sudden. And streamlining, I think, I'm not sure if it's a good enough reason to bypass the bylaws
I
that
also
we
think
follow.
it's unfair to pit, these 80 or so employees, to treat them differently than the other. I don't know, maybe we have about 200 between those other, maybe 150 between those other 6 unions. These 80 people or so always seem to be singled out and separated. I get it, they're not part of a union, and that's the way it is, but the board was supportive of this, the select board, and that's why it's on there that way.
But so then what's their issue? Is it with the process that we have to utilize in order to give the step increases or to determine what those increases are going to look like? Or is it, I'm legitimately asking, I'm not
The
being
issue-
sarcastic, like what's their issue? Is that we have to go through a process because they're not in the union?
No, it's not the employees issue. They don't have they fall under the personnel bylaws, so
Right.
they don't have any collective bargaining rights or
Okay,
anything. That they don't, and they won't even with this. All it is here's a salary schedule for the next 3 years, and that's really it. They're still going to progress through the steps and everything else. They're going to have to do their evaluations. They'll still fall under the personnel board as far as vacation and all that. It's
no,
just
I understand that. But what I'm saying is locking in for the next 3 years, I don't think it's appropriate because again, it's streamlining what it leads to is just bypassing the actual process that has been, what seems to have been in effect for a long time. I mean, I've been on the personnel board, I think for 3 or 4 years, but before that, the finance committee, and I was never aware of anything where we set up a salary schedule for any certain time. And it is because of the things that have happened. I understand that you're saying things are great now, but I also know that the state is doing a budget month to month. So we don't know what tomorrow will bring. We don't know if we have another lockdown, shutdown with the economy. So that's my other concern.
Jim, I have a thought on your question a while ago about why it's divisive. It struck me as the moderator that it's a article that people, they argue against it because they can, and they feel like they have some say or sway over that one. It's almost counterintuitive that although those are usually small dollar amounts, people like to challenge why the raises are being put in place, and so you get 20 minutes of discussion on the pay scales, but then whatever it is now, $70 million school budget passes without
Right.
people. It's just, I think people challenge it because they can. And that, in general, a lot of things like that are like that in town meeting. The smaller budget items tend to generate more discussion than the real big ticket items. And I think it's just because people feel an obligation to challenge, make sure that people's money is being spent well, and that they have some influence over that. So that was just how it used to appear to me standing up there.
Through you,
Can I
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Oh, Jane, go ahead. You haven't had a chance.
Well, I just had a question. I'm just trying to understand, talking about putting it all together and going for 3 years. We still have the option, or you have still have the option to say, hey, the bottom fell out. We're gonna have to cut back on this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're saying you want the 3 years so you can plan your budget, but it's not cast in concrete, right?
No, if it came to that, I'd cut. So let's say come, I don't know, November or December, maybe even January, February, I come to you folks and I said, but the state finally passed their budget. The salary schedule that passed is just, the salary schedule and the other issues that have passed, and what the school department is telling me that they can live off. Because you're right, Jim. The school department, out of a $95 million budget, this is an $87,000 item. The
Right.
school department's budget is close to 50 million without the insurance and the building maintenance and the plowing and all that stuff. But I could come and we could definitely make those changes, Jane. You're correct.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to be sure, because I know you said that before, and I hear what Julie's saying, and we certainly need flexibility, and it is not the way it's been done, but it isn't a huge amount of money that we're talking about. Okay, I think I'm on board now. I understand better, I should say.
I guess my point though is it's not so much whether it's 50,000 or 5 million. I'm more concerned with the process that's involved and what our role is.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Okay, no,
yeah,
I hear you. I agree with you, Julie.
Yeah.
I understand.
okay.
Okay.
Jim, I have a question. Who's the sponsor of this article? Is it the select board?
The select board are.
And the other comment I'll have is that we had this discussion on the non-union, because we don't really have any say on the union contracts. Those are negotiated by the school committee, or you with the fire, police, and other town
So it's
employees,
the
I
school
believe.
committee or the select board.
Correct, I'm sorry. And so what we weigh in on, and what we weighed in on probably, I don't know, a meeting or two ago, was the non-union folks, and we had a debate, a discussion, I think a healthy discussion, and we did, and the vote was taken, and that's how it went forward. I really, in my opinion, I'd rather have that process continue annually, not commit to a 3-year. I understand but you can still do the budget. I mean, your budget is a moving target all the time, because you never know what the state's going to do. You don't know what revenues are going to do. You don't know economic conditions. I mean, God knows, planning out 3 years at this stage is probably pretty impossible, but I understand you have to start somewhere, and you have a budget. I get it. And then you work from that. You have to starting point. But I really think that our discussion is warranted on an annual basis, to have a healthy discussion, debate about what's going on with the non-union folks, which was really the only part we weigh in on. I'll
Okay.
stop there.
Were you asking a question of me, Larry, or just making a statement?
I would say more of a statement. I understand your rationale or your reasoning why. I just think that we, as the personnel board, should weigh in on this on an annual basis, as the process it works. I don't see it. You can still do your budget, and your budget's going to have these numbers in there, because the majority of it, as you said, it's already union contracts, school contracts, $100 grand or so. It's not going to throw your budget out of kilter, I don't think, or 87,000.
Yeah, it's
So I think
87, yeah.
it's
Less than 1%. Yeah.
So is it fair to say that this would be continued to be an agenda item on an annual basis for us to just review the progress of the money that Jim is budgeting for the next 3 years?
I wouldn't be looking to take you guys out of the loop. And Judy, Julie, that wasn't my intent whatsoever. I mean, I need you guys to, personnel board is supposed to be the advocate for the, not only the taxpayers, but the employees here in town, the 80 or so that aren't represented by a union contract, you know, and I'd be looking for you guys to do that and to consider, you know, here's where we stand in November or December with these adjustments or whatever else. So that's not my intent whatsoever.
No, but but I think we might agree that that's my point, because we are in the loop and that is what we sit down and meet and discuss and take a look at. I just think all the more reason to continue to do that instead of, you know, locking in and then looking back and saying it's not working. It creates, I think, even more work unnecessarily when, you know, kind of like if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I'm just not seeing the actual need, especially in this climate.
So going forward, obviously this is an article, this is all, everything grouped in together, the warrant's closed and everything. It's gonna be considered, I know you folks are gonna be asked, I'm gonna urge the select board to watch this video, take this under consideration and see what their thoughts are on this one. But I would like to come back to you guys before town meeting and ask you, probably they're gonna say, how did personnel board vote on this? I'm not looking for a vote tonight, but eventually Mike and everyone, I'm gonna ask the board to at least get a vote on the record, because Dan will probably refer to you, Mike, and say, how did the personnel board consider any of this? Because these 80 or so employees are part of this.
Understood.
Will we have a meeting before the town meeting?
If Mike's okay with it, you guys are okay with it, I would definitely recommend you should, yeah.
May I ask a question? Maybe I don't understand the process fully. So I guess where I'm confused is, how did it get combined? Wouldn't it have been prudent to have the discussion first? You know, so that if one part of it isn't okay, meaning this is going to be presented as one big deal. So either it gets voted or it doesn't.
Yes.
And I guess I'm trying to figure out, how did that happen and why? You know, who decided to just put it under one article? And I guess I'm saying, is it risky technically?
It's one article, the
Yeah.
warrant closed, the select board are the sponsors of the entire article.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, when does finance committee consider this article? I would think they'd want to know how personnel board weighed in on it as part of their debate or their discussion.
They're set to talk about this on Thursday night, and I will, if you want to vote on it tonight, you can, that's fine. The vote is on the agenda, but I will relay your concerns. Basically, so Julie's really the one who's expressed the most amount of concerns, I think. So what I will take back to them is, there's a member that has a concern that this is, I wrote this down, taking the personnel board out of the loop by allowing this to be a 3-year salary schedule. How does the rest of the board feel on this?
But I just want to be clear, it's not just that issue, it's locking into a 3-year schedule.
Yeah, that's
is the second part. So that it's two-pronged. And then I do take, whether I have a right or not to, I
Julie,
will.
what's the second? I want to write this down and make sure I get it. The
Yeah,
two-prong is, you feel like it's taking the personnel board out of the loop by
Yeah,
doing.
just under our own bylaws, when I read them, it says that we take a vote and we shall, not maybe, or we shall look at the schedule. And if there's any reclassification, regrading, or any type of change in that schedule, we look at it and we vote. And that's why it's concerning to just lock it in for 3 years. And you could have changes next year on the personnel board. I mean, the board is here for a reason, so to speak. And this isn't like a power hungry type thing. I'm just trying to follow the bylaws that I've read through when I took on the appointment.
Yeah.
And making sure that I'm doing my due diligence and following through with that. That's really my concern. The second prong is the locking in to any type of rates for 3 years. And I think I would say that even if we weren't in the midst of the COVID pandemic, in knowing that our own state of Massachusetts is making a budget month to month, And it sounds to me, just in some of the meetings that I take part in with other agencies with the state, it sounds like that's going to continue to go forward for quite some time as well. So,
So I guess I want to know how everybody else feels.
So if I could, I tend to agree with Julie with regard to the process. I mean, and I know that you said that nothing's set in stone, and if this comes up again and there's some problems, we can reevaluate it and it will change. So I guess my question, and maybe I don't understand the whole thing, but so if that's the case and we're going to look at it again in a year because something might not be working and it's not set in stone, then why wouldn't we just simply vote on it again next year as part of our regular process? So I think I believe, or I think I agree with Julie's first point, and that would be my concern as well.
Which is the 3 years you're concerned? I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, locking it in for 3 years without any annual review, like everything else.
Okay.
And only from a process standpoint, because if it's in the bylaws and there are new members, it's not consistent.
Okay.
I'll be honest, the finance committee's meeting, I would suggest we vote because I would think they'd look upon what we thought. And I'm not saying we're gonna derive the finance committee's final vote, but I think to just have them knowing that we weighed in on it. Good or yes or no.
Okay.
So so John, I want to know what like John and Jane think too, because then I'll get to my point at the end. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, I can see why you want to do it for budgeting. I do think that, as Julie says, we're here for a reason. I'd be inclined to say also, let's just review it every year like we have.
Okay, John?
I'll be the lone wolf. I'm fine with it. I think looking at it from the perspective of town meeting, making that more streamlined, I think is a good idea. I'm confident that we're not being taken out of the loop. Us as the personnel board, and then town meeting itself has the safeguard of if this goes to them as one group, there's the possibility to divide the question to address any one of those particular contracts individually, or a year of this of the pay scales individually. So there's that kind of stopgap as well. So if we vote tonight, I'm in favor of it. So I'd say, I mean, I don't disagree with Julie's concerns. I just think it's at this point in time, it's a good idea, and I'd be in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. So question, I guess, to you folks. It seems like your problem with this, at least the majority of the board, is that it says specifically 3 years. If it said 1 year, I get the feeling that you wouldn't have, to lock us in for 21, be done with it and move on to the next year. Would you feel better, Julie? I'm going to ask you because you're the most vocal person on this. Would you feel more comfortable with that?
forgive me, say that to lock it in for a year?
Just for FY21 instead of being a 3-year thing.
I'd be more comfortable with it, but I'm still concerned about just the process. Again, just the process. Do you know what
Could
I
I
mean?
ask what part of the process? Because the only part of the process that's different is grouping all 7 in as one. You prefer, it's too late to separate it out.
Right, and yeah, that's troublesome, but
Okay. So if we did it as 1 year, I'm going to probably be back here in October and say, listen, the general consensus I got from the board was that you didn't like the 3-year. I need you people to vote in October on the living adjustment. And each year I recommend a living adjustment, usually about 2%. And there's some pushback from members, but for the most part, is there going to be pushback? I guess if come October, I want the budget set. I want to know what I'm getting into. Are you gonna say, Jim, we're not comfortable with the 2%? We want a 0. And that's, for those 80 or so employees, that's, I would like to know where you're coming from then, Julie, if we go that route. And I want to know what I'm getting into.
So are you asking, for example, if we follow the procedures that we always have? and
Yeah,
you come
but in the
for those?
procedures we followed, it was always like November, December. I really want to set this budget. I guess I'd give you a deadline of November at the latest to set the living adjustments.
And then forgive me, because I don't recall, when do we typically, I'd have to look back in my minutes and notes and the agenda as to when do we typically take a look at the COLA adjustment?
You start to look at it in November. And Christine, do you remember, did they set it in December or January? Do you remember? It was late. I remember this past year.
This is Larry. We voted on it probably 2 meetings ago, maybe 3. We had a discussion and we tabled it, I think, while Patrick and yourself were getting us some more information. And then we voted, I'd have to go back to minutes myself. I'm gonna help me out, gang, but maybe April or March or maybe sooner.
It was before that. It was before that. It was the first thing we voted on, I think, when I joined the board.
So that would have been in the fall.
In the fall, and I think it got reviewed again, and then you had to go present some stuff at FinCom, I think, Larry, right?
I had to present to FinCon. Yeah, that was probably cheapest. That was probably
February.
January or something.
January,
February.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a while ago. You're right. So we voted on it in the fall. I guess you're right. My memory's fading.
The way Julie, I don't know the exact date, but it was after I had the budget. And so we had to go back into all the budgets and make 80 changes to the various budgets. And I'd ask that this board do it before the budget's finalized. If it's the route you want to go in, and that's, and that's what ends up happening. But I agree with Larry. I guess since Finance Committee's taking this up on Thursday night, they are going to probably ask me, did Personnel Board consider this? So the census I'm getting, I'm getting the feeling it might be a 4-to-1 vote against this article altogether, because it's so be it. And then we'll go from there.
Unfortunately, I think we have to take a vote, and I'll be, if through you, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to vote no on this. Because it's combined article, it was carved out. It's the way it's set up. We have kind of
So it's a no action, right, Larry?
No action is okay with me, I think. No, I'm a no, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Yep. I second the motion.
All right. All in favor of a no?
Aye.
Right. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right. So it's
Opposed?
4.
Aye.
Yeah. So it's 4-1.
So Mike, you'll probably be prepared. You got to be prepared to speak at town meeting. So good luck. Okay, that's it for me.
Thanks, Jim. Mike, I'll help you here. We have approval
Yeah, we had a
of
vote
personnel
on.
act number 4 on the agenda.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to accept the personnel action request as in our package that was supplied to us, in favor of.
I second the motion.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
And we have minutes, 5A and 5B.
Yeah, I'm just pulling them up. Can I get a motion to? Do you want to do them separately or both together?
Separate.
Okay.
I'll make a motion
All
to
right.
approve the minutes of February 11th, 2020.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Opposed,
I'll make-
abstain. Okay. The motion, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mike. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 19th, 2020.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Anybody opposed, abstained? All right, they're voted. All right, is there anything else on the, let's see. Sorry, guys. All right, I think that's it. Do we need to do anything else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Are we gonna set up another meeting or
True, we should probably, that's right, I'll hold that motion for a second while we discuss an October meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna keep with the same schedule. Okay, was it the second Tuesday? Is that how it's been working?
Sure.
Works for me.
Yours truly.
All right.
Same time too, 6 o'clock works.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. All right, so that would be October 6th. No, sorry, October 13th, 6 p.m. Okay. Good. All
I'll come back with my motion to adjourn.
right.
Anybody second?
I'll second.
Great.
All right.
All in favor?
We're adjourned.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Bye,
Take care.
guys.
Be
See you next
safe.
time. Take care.
Good night.
Thanks, Christine.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.